There's a storm going on. Felt like a good time to read. The Miniature, Part 8. On the theme of Petit Poucet, in folklore as well as among poets, we have just seen transpositions of sighs that give a double life to poetic space. 2 lines suffice sometimes for this transposition, as, for instance, these lines by Noel Bureau. He lay down behind the blade of grass to enlarge the sky. I love that. But sometimes the transactions between small and large multiply, have repercussions. Then, when a familiar image grows to the dimensions of the sky, one is suddenly struck by the impression that correlatively familiar objects become the miniatures of a world. Macrocosm and microcosm are correlated. This correlation, which can become operative in both directions, has served as basis for certain poems by Jules Supervielle, especially those collected under the revealing title Gravitations. Here, every poetic center of interest, whether in the sky or on the earth, is a center of active gravity. For the poet, this center of gravity is soon, if one can say this, both in heaven and on earth. For instance, with what freedom of movement in the images, the family table becomes an aerial table, with the sun for its lamp. The man, the woman, the children, at the aerial table, resting on a miracle that seeks its definition. Then, after this explosion of unreality, the poet comes down to earth again. I am back again at my usual table, on the cultivated earth, the one that yields corn and flocks. I recognize the faces about me with their lights and shades of truth. The image that serves as pivot for this transforming daydream, which is by turns earthly and aerial, familiar and cosmic, is the image of the lamp sun or the sun lamp. One could find innumerable literary documents on the subject of this very ancient image, but Jules Supervielle contributes an important variation by making it active in both directions. Thus he restores its entire suppleness to the imagination, a suppleness so miraculous that the image can be said to represent the sum of the direction that enlarges and the direction that concentrates. The poet keeps the image from becoming motionless. If we are alive to Supervielle's cosmic illusions under this title Gravitations, which is filled with scientific significance for the modern mind, may be found ideas that have a distinguished past. When the history of science is not over-modernized, and Copernicus, for instance, is taken as he was, with all his dreams and ideas, it becomes evident that the stars gravitate about light, and that the sun is, primarily, the great light of the world. Later, mathematicians decided that it was a magnetic mass. Upper light, being the principle of centrality, is a very important value in the hierarchy of images. For the imagination, therefore, the world gravitates about a value. The evening lamp on the family table is also the center of a world. In fact, the lamp-lighted table is a little world in itself, and a dreamer philosopher may well fear lest our indirect lighting cause us to lose the center of the evening room. If this happens, will memory retain the faces of other days with their lights and shades of truth? When we have followed Supervielle's entire poem, both in its astral ascensions and its return to the world of human beings, we perceive that the familiar world assumes the new relief of a dazzling cosmic miniature. We did not know that the familiar world was so large. The poet has shown us that large is not incompatible with small, and we are reminded of Baudelaire's comments on certain Goya lithographs, which he called vast pictures in miniature. He also said of Marc Baud, an enamelist, he knows how to create large in small. In reality, as we shall see later, especially when we examine images of immenseness. Tiny and immense are compatible. A poet is always ready to see large and small. For instance, thanks to the image, a man like Paul Claudel in his cosmogony was quick to assimilate the vocabulary, if not the thinking, of contemporary science. The following lines are from his Cinq Grandes Odes, page 180. Just as we see little spiders or certain little insect larvae hidden like precious stones in their cotton and satin pouches, in the same way I was shown an entire nestful of still embarrassed suns in the cold folds of the nebula. If a poet looks through a microscope or a telescope, he always sees the same thing.